18th section, chronological survey, Greek mythology, I'm just reminding you what I'm doing here is I'm dealing with the myths through adaptations of the myths. I choose to do that because there's just too much to deal with all the myths. Well, anyway, Pygmalion is not, maybe it's not one of the most famous of the myths, and it's almost, you could almost say it's legend, because it's, well, you know, the difference between a myth and a legend is a little hard to say. But in Pygmalion, I put it in quotes, the original story is about a sculptor who was an extremely good sculptor. Women wanted to marry him, but he didn't want to marry because he liked his work. He wanted to keep sculpting, but he was made to he promised he would marry, yes. But he had to finish his masterpiece first. And so to do this masterpiece, he took a long time to do it. He wasn't in a big hurry to marry. But anyway, it was to be this beautiful woman, and he used the goddess Aphrodite. She's the goddess of love and desire, especially, of sexual desire, of beauty. Venus is what the Romans call her. Well, anyway, he makes the model, and finally it's all done, and it's perfect. And Aphrodite is so flattered that she gives him a gift. He goes up and he hugs his model, his marble model, and the marble comes to life, and it's a woman. And he then gets to marry that woman. So the gist of the Pygmalion story is a guy gets to create or form or shape or develop his idea of a perfect woman, and then gets to marry her. Well, that's the myth, and you might think, well, that's kind of weird. But boy, does it ever work. Well, Pygmalion was made into a stage play called Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. Pygmalion, and I underline it now. I don't put it in quotes because now it's the name of a play. Wonderful play. It was then made into a black and white movie in 1938. Wonderful. And then it was made into a Broadway musical called My Fair Lady, and then that was made into a color, one of the most successful Broadway musicals of all time, possibly, My Fair Lady. Well, in it, instead of it being a sculptor, it's a linguist named Henry Higgins. And he takes a girl, a gutter snipe he calls her, he takes her off the streets of London, Covent Garden. She's selling flowers, and her English is so bad by Victorian standards that she could never possibly get a good job. As soon as she opens her mouth, she sounds stupid because she has that Cockney accent. And he makes a bet with a guy that he could, within 6 months, I think, train her not only to speak like a lady, I'm tempted to say lady because she would say lady like a lady instead of lady, and pass her off as a duchess at ambassador's reception, I think it is. And so it follows that. I really want you to watch some of this, especially maybe two scenes especially. It's on YouTube. It's just a click away. Pygmalion, and if you put this into YouTube, there you'll find a version of it that's captioned. And there's the channel that put it on there. And I looked into that channel. That's a very interesting channel. It's got captions. I believe it's to help deaf people. But in a case like this movie, those captions can be pretty handy, especially if you don't speak English well. I've got some viewers in Germany, and I think for them that would be really nice because the Cockney accent is so strong. At one point she says, "The Rhine in Spain stays mainly in the plain." The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain, and that was made into a song. The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain, when it was My Fair Lady. I really would, whether you get that version or not, I'd really like you to look at this. I guess it's in the public domain, so now it's allowed to be on YouTube. It's not infringing any copyright. Black and white. Anyway, the parts I'd like you to see is the opening part, where he does what I told you earlier in the linguistics section certain linguists can do. He can spot where somebody's from just by listening to them speak. That's his hobby. And he shows that off at the very beginning. And then I would like you to see his training. When he trains Eliza Doolittle to say things like, in Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire, hurricanes hardly ever happen. You see the initial H, happen. It's aspirated in standard English, and in Cockney they drop it, happened. They just don't say it. I know kind of a funny joke about that related to the hippies in the 1960s, but I guess I won't tell that. I'll set it up and then you can figure it out. The three most common words in the 1960s were peace, love, and ear. And you know, people say, ear? What do you mean ear? I'm into it this far. Here we go. Peace, love, and ear. You know, the idea was they were passing joints and they held their breath in, so when they'd say here, you know, you're next. If they said here, they would blow the smoke out. I probably shouldn't have told you that. Sorry. Well, anyway, a custodian told me that at the middle school where I taught, and I thought it was so funny. Okay, aspirated H, that was. Hurricanes hardly ever happen. The other scene that I would really like you to see, it's nice to see the finale, where she is presented successfully, and, well, it's just a very well-made movie. I use that as an opportunity to show the kids waltzing, or I used it, I say here. That's a waltz that they're doing. But the other scene I like to show is when he tries her out at his mother's house, at high tea, and she has not yet finished her training. So she's only got a few subjects that she can talk about, her health and the weather. And Eliza, this really is a wonderful movie. Eliza gets on to the subject of her health, and she starts to tell a story. Well, she's a very good storyteller. And she's trying to tell the story in standard English, Victorian style English, which she half does but half doesn't, and it's very funny. All right, anyway, it's an adaptation. Let's see, compare this to She's All That. There's a teen movie. It's virtually an adaptation of Pygmalion. Guys make a bet about taking a loser of a high school girl and taking her get her to be prom queen. Much better, I think, than the spoof of teen movies called Not Another Teen Movie. They use this one so much. That, I think, was a good movie. The Taming of the Shrew is a little bit similar. Shakespeare's play, The Taming of the Shrew. And I'll probably have something more to say about that later. It's not quite exactly the same thing. But I think it's interesting how that kind of a story, I've known so many women that love this play, The Taming of the Shrew. And really, a guy forces a woman to be the kind of woman he wants. Well, anyway, I'm not so sure about this one, but She's All That. There was one called Weird Science. Oh, and I can't think of the name of it. I can't think of the name of it, but there's one that most kids know about it, where a woman who works for the FBI or something has to infiltrate a beauty contest, and some guy has to try to teach her how to act feminine. I'm sure some of you watching it, you know exactly what that movie is, and see, if I had a class of students, they'd tell me exactly what that is. But I just can't think of it. Maybe I'll think of it by tomorrow. All right, see you tomorrow.